There's a lot of reasons why I love the genre of horror. I like the idea that the genre explores things that a lot of movies don't. It explores the dark side of whether it's humanity, whether it's questioning whether there's ghosts, whether there's demons. Horror has always been able to explore those things very well. I also love it because we have so many great franchises from horror. Friday the 13th, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, Halloween. There's been so many franchises that come out, even through recent years, like Hatchet, where it has some of the best franchises that I've seen. A lot of those that I've named are some of my favorite film franchises. And, also horror has always been there. It's always been something that I was able to go to and watch. Uh, there's a lot of creativity in horror, and it really gives you a chance to just sort of escape, the stresses of what's ever going on around you. And I never really got that from. It's my personal opinion, my personal preference. I never really got that from like comedies and action movies. I've always been able to do that with horror because I like how it explores those dark nature that really a lot of films don't do, and also I just like how they're a lot of them are fun to watch. A lot of them you can have fun time with, like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Child's Play. A lot of these franchises you can watch and just have a lot of fun with and have a marathon watch. Most of them are short movies, so you'll be able to get to the marathon, lickety split, and a lot of them are really great horror films. And also one of the strongest things that I love about horror is that there are sort of those movies that just sort of come out of nowhere, and the ones that are just sort of like bam, they're awesome, they're great, and in a lot of cases they're underrated. A lot of cases you don't really hear too much about them, or maybe you hear a little rumor here or there about them, but you don't really know about them that much. And then when you sit down and you watch them, you're like, wow, what a great movie! Because The Witch. When I first watched it, I'm like, wow, it's a very unique movie. Um, it Follows, The Babadook. Um, those are movies I sat down like, wow. Or even when I was having doubts about The Conjuring 2, I mean, I'll admit when The Conjuring 2 came out, I was kind of like, meh, it's a sequel to a movie that I'm not really a big fan of because the hype killed it for me. But The Conjuring 2, I seen it before all the hype came. So when I seen it, it was a very surprising experience. Like, wow, what a great, horror film. And there's just been many of horror films that I've seen that I've gone like, yeah, Blu-ray, I gotta get it on Blu-ray, gotta get it on Blu-ray. And not necessarily saying that, all those movies I just mentioned when I get on Blu-ray, but a lot of the movies that, really surprised me, I'm like, wow, I mean, I will get a Blu-ray of that. I've gotten a Blu-ray of It Follows because I think that movie deserves a Blu-ray. You know, and of course there are those horror films that kind of just follow cliches and fall flat on their face. But what I just generally love about horror is that there are those movies that sort of come out of nowhere that sort of don't get that hype yet, and you watch it and you're like, okay, it could be an okay movie, it could be a decent movie or whatever, and you sit down and you watch it, like you walk out of the theater like, wow, that was a great movie. Um, The Strangers 2 or The Strangers Pray at Night, um, that is a good example of that. And, when I was going into this, the first movie I think is a decent horror film. I don't think it's one of the greatest horror films, but I do think that for what it is, a decent horror film. It does take its time. You do have to have a little bit of patience with that movie. It's a slow burn kind of horror film that it does take a minute to get into, but once it does, I thought the first movie just nailed it. The suspense, the thrills, just the craziness of the idea, and just the scariness of the idea. The scariness of some people who are just doing this crime just to do it with really no explanation why. Attacking you, attacking from the first movie, it would be the guy's wife, or if they were attacking, you and your family. I mean, it's just a scary situation that I've always thought, whether it was The Strangers, whether it was Your Next, those home invasion movies, I thought was always a very well done, idea. It's an idea that can be explored a lot and done very well. And when I seen the trailer for this movie on TV, I was kind of like, why are they making this? And I guess it's because, this is the 10-year anniversary of the first movie. First movie came out in 2008. Of course, 2018. This is one of the first horror films, 2018. And I remember when they showed the commercials for this movie, they didn't really show too much of them. And it wasn't like the freaking Bye Bye Man, where I seen freaking commercials everywhere. I'm like, this movie looks crappy. When I seen the trailer for it, I was kind of like, why are they making it? It's kind of out of nowhere. It's, there's really a reason for a second Strangers movie. And I was already drawing conclusions in my head. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be like a cliche horror movie. It's going to be one of those movies where, it's going to have all the cliches in the book. But it's not. It's a horror film that gets a 5.9 on IMDb, and I don't know why it does. It's even low rated than the first movie. I think this movie's like miles upon miles better than the first movie. Directed by Johannes Roberts. I think that's how you say the name. Johannes Roberts. Not really too sure what he's made. I actually want to see. He's actually directed 47 Meters Down. I'm a fan of that movie, but the ending. The ending didn't. I didn't really care for the ending, but for the most part, it was pretty good. Made a movie called Hellbreeder. I think I've seen that. No lie. I think I've seen that about a mother whose sons died, and she goes after this. I think it's a clown. Why do I think I've seen that? I believe I have. I'm not too sure. Hellbreeder. I think I have. I've seen that a long time ago, though. Like a long time ago. He also made Dark Hunters. So really, the earlier part of his career, he wasn't really doing the greatest. I mean, Dark Hunters and Hellbreeder got like 2 out of 10 on IMDb. He made a movie called Forest of the Damned, which I've heard about. 2.9. These are all looking like, direct to DVD type movies. But, it looks like at first he wasn't doing that great. And then he made 47 Meters Down. And at least that's the only one that I've really been familiar with. I've heard of Store 24, but I haven't seen that. It gets a 4.4. So I think it was when he hit that point in his career when he made 47 Meters Down is when I think he started getting really good. And then this movie just shows that this guy is just a fantastic director. Yeah, a lot of his movies are pretty bad, but in this movie he showed really great potential to make a fantastic movie. If you give him the budget, he can make a good movie. Because 47 Meters Down, I think, is a very well-made movie. Visually, it looks great. Acting was great. Everything in that movie was nailed except for the ending. The ending was horrible, and that's why I can't say that it's a perfect movie or that it's a great movie. It's just a good movie. But it would be miles better if he just sort of did a director's cut or whatever, or did like a second cut of the film and just completely changed that ending, because that ending was just like, it threw me off, and I'm like, why? And I was like, really? Like, you built this, and it's like Inside. I brought that movie up in so many reviews, but Inside, that movie is a great gore fest until you get to the ending. I'm like, really? Why would you? That's the thing in the movie. If you're gonna build something up, don't let it fall flat. If you're gonna keep building it up, building the suspense, building the thrills, you're getting ready for the certain part of the movie, and then it just sort of like, yeah, whatever, kind of trashes that. I'm like, really, come on. So that was a common problem with 47 Meters Down and Inside, is that they kind of had really great build up, and then the ending just kind of sucked. Um, with this movie though, to get back to The Strangers Pray at Night, I want to say it's a sequel. I believe technically it is a sequel because it follows the first movie. And it basically is about this family. They're going to go out for, I believe, the summer to go to this camp area. And I think they know some people that are going to be there. They're going to meet them there. And the family, I like how the family isn't typical. They build up problems within the family, like the struggle between the daughter kind of being disconnected from the family and how she's sort of dealing with these problems and maybe depression, and it kind of explores that. And I like how when you're going into this movie, you think it's gonna be one thing, and then it completely just it surprises you because as a horror fan, you know a lot of the cliches, you know a lot of the beats they play in most horror films, and I like how in this movie they make you think, they make you use your brain, and you're just sort of like, wow, okay, that's not what I thought it was. Wow, that's not what I thought it was. And I love that about this movie. I love horror film that kind of take the genre and they go, okay, we're gonna play around with that. Here's what we got. Like You're Next or It Follows. Those kind of movies that can kind of just take it and say, here's what we got. Grave Encounters. That's a good example. Grave Encounters. You think it's gonna be a typical paranormal movie, and it's a very well made, very well acted, very well for being a found footage type movie. It's very well done, and it ends up being a great time, and it ends up being a very fun, very scary time to watch. There's been plenty of movies that have come out over the years that I think have done that, and this is definitely on that list. This is definitely this year so far is going to be a good year because we have that Unsane movie that's coming out. We have a couple other horror films that really caught my attention. um, we've seen a lot of trailers for, upcoming horror films that I thought looked really great, and this year is going to be a very solid year for horror. There's just a lot of titles that were being shown, and I was like, wow, this is going to be good. Wow, it's going to be good. Wow, it looks good. So I was like, okay, this year is going to be pretty good for horror. And this movie definitely kicks off the year in a very solid way because I think that it's so underrated. I didn't really hear too much about this movie, and to be a 5.9 surprises me because I think this takes horror and it makes it into something that's very unique, very interesting, and very watchable. You get sucked into it. There's a couple times where I'm like, okay, like the first movie, it kind of drags, but it's building characters, it's building story. If you can be patient with it, if you give it time, when it gets to the scary part, it's better that way. It does that with The Thing, it does it with The Omen, The Shining, The Exorcist. A lot of these great classic horror films are kind of focused on that just slow, methodical pace to where you finally see this, this scary horror stuff, and it's really done well. And it's probably not as much of a slow paced movie as the first one, but it does start off a little slow. You know, Most of the beginning of the movie is just trying to establish the characters. Like I said, you have this family going out to this camp area, and on their way there, you kind of see their problems. The son, the daughter, they're not really into the trip. They don't really want to go. The parents are trying their best, and when they get to this area, I swear it looks like Crystal Lake. You don't really see an actual lake in the movie, at least I can't remember it, but it looks like the perfect atmosphere for a Friday the 13th movie. So I thought that was very well done. And when they get there, of course, these strangers are there, same people from the last movie. You have one in kind of a Betty Boop looking mask. You have one in a sort of like doll looking mask, and then you have a sackhead killer guy, and they start chasing after these people. And this probably will be a spoiler review. I'll probably mention some things, so spoiler alert, maybe if necessary, but spoiler alert just in case. Um, you know, I just like how when you look at that plot, you're just like, okay, it's typical. But they do certain points in the movie where you're like, okay, this is not your typical horror film. I thought that they really made you think, okay, maybe this person is, gonna live, and it's like, no, they die. And it's like, maybe this person's gonna live, no, they die. Maybe the killers are not gonna get killed at all. No, this one dies. It's like, I said spoiler alert, so that was already in effect. But it gets you and it surprises you, and like, wow, okay, that wasn't what I expected. And the scary thing about this movie is that I think they explored it more well done in this movie, where it's like, you know, with the killers wearing these masks, you think they're just these monsters, these terrible creatures, these terrible people. But I like when the girl, the lead girl of the movie, takes one of the masks off of them, and she asks the person like, "Why are you doing this?" And the person just goes, "Because why not?" And it's like at that moment you realize that these are normal people just being complete monsters, being complete maniacs, and it makes it a very scary moment in the movie because you're like, they're not deformed hillbillies in the backwoods, they're not demons, they're not ghosts, they're not goblins. They're normal people who are just crazy, out of control, who are doing it just to do it, you know? There's a good line in the first movie where they ask the same question. They're like, "Why are you doing this?" And they say, "Because you were home." In this movie, they say, "Because why not?" It's just people doing this because why not? You know, and it's a crazy approach to that because usually in slasher movies it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, there's this little backstory where when they were kids they were traumatized, or whether it was in Terror Train or the guy was traumatized in college, or you know, it has that stuff. It a lot of most horror films don't do where it's just these normal people, they put these masks on and they become these crazy killers, you know? And that was a very scary part in the movie where you realize they're not possessed people, they're not demons, they're just people who are completely crazy. And, you know, it's a very scary moment because you realize how dark, you know, humanity can be. And I know that I might be going way too into it, but that one scene alone was just such a powerful representative of that. It's like, you know, it just shows you, hey, these guys, they're not some superpower, never dying people. They're just psychotic, crazy people who are just doing this just to do it. And, you know, at first, the acting I didn't really think was going to be that great, but it ended up being very surprising. The characters, they do certain things that, you know, surprise you. And you know, while you're watching this movie, you're not going to be knowing who's going to live and who's going to die. You're going to be guessing, like, okay, that person just died. Who else is going to die? You know, how far are they going to go with this movie? And you're never really too sure with this movie. You know, that it keeps going further and further. And you have moments where you think they're safe and they're not safe. You know, there's a great moment where they're in this trailer, and the sort of sister character has her leg or arm cut, and one of the killers drives a truck right to the trailer, and it's done such at the perfect time because you're not really expecting it. The brother trying to keep the sister calm, so he's telling her this story about when he was a kid and how he, you know, hurt himself, and his mom noticed it, and because he fell off a tree or whatever, and you know the mom's like, "What did you do?" Whatever, and he was telling the story to calm her down, and then this freaking truck just drives right through the trailer and doesn't hit them. It just stops right there. It's a freaking terrifying moment in the movie. Or you have the Sackhead Killer, where he listens to this like very 80s music. It adds a creepy element to it, and like a lot of things in this movie are nailed: direction, acting, suspense, scares, creepiness. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but atmosphere. It's definitely a bloody movie. It's brutal as heck at times because when you build characters up like this and you kill them off, it it's more impactful than a Friday the 13th movie where just, you know, teens, you know, who are getting high and having sex are getting killed off one by one. That's more of like a fun approach to a slasher movie. Here, it's like they build these characters up, and when they do die, it's like very you feel it. You feel the impact of them dying, and it's like it's much more scary that way. Um, and so I thought when the kills happened, they were brutal. They were just, you know, they were impactful. They really added to the creepiness and scariness of the movie. And I love the camera work. I love the camera angles. I love a lot of things about this movie. This is definitely one of my favorite movies from this year. Um, and I know it's like it's surprising because it's just a sequel to The Strangers, but believe me, it's much more than that. You're gonna go into it and think it's gonna be typical, but really it isn't. Um, it's just a very well made movie, and it's a movie that was very surprising, and I definitely did not expect. But you know, one of the things they did in this movie I thought was very well done was that they actually went with the ending. You know, and I already said spoiler alert, so we're way past that. But I like how at the ending, they let the ending play out like it's supposed to. And I'm like, thank you, because there were so many times where like, okay, there's the killer. He's just gonna kill her. And it's like, no, she fights back. She gets a freaking shotgun and blows one of the killers away. The brother to the sister stabs the killer, and then the sackhead killer, he gets blown up in this car, and you have the great ending where she smacks him in the head with his bat, and it freaking breaks his head, pretty much breaks his skull, and she gets away, and she's in the hospital, and then you get that ending where maybe they're still alive, maybe they're not. But there's a lot of good stuff to this movie. It's very well done. I really enjoyed it. Um, it's a very well made horror film that I think that if you guys haven't seen yet, check it out. It's very well made. But yeah, that's pretty much what I gotta say about The Strangers Pray at Night. It's a great movie. It's definitely surprising. I'm picking up on Blu-ray. I'm not trying to overhype it too much because it's not like it's a perfect horror film, but it's pretty daggone good. And if I say it's pretty daggone good, it's pretty daggone good. But it's definitely an interesting, very surprising, very unique horror film. And it's just very well done. It's very well made, and even the commercials before it got me hyped for later horror films that are going to be coming out this year. And man, what a way to kick off a year of horror. It's a great movie. It's a great time. It's a fun time, but yet a scary time. And it's underrated as heck. It's underrated as heck. I actually want to see if it bombed or not. Because if it bombed, then that's bullcrap because it deserved a lot of money. It grossed out about 13 million. Didn't make a whole lot. Cost about 10 million. Made 13 million in the U.S. Unless it grosses a little bit more worldwide, that's pretty much not a hit at all. But at least it made back its budget. But it didn't really do that great, which is sad because this is a very good horror film. I think it's miles better than a lot of other horror films that I've seen, and it deserves a Blu-ray pickup. So, anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review on The Strangers Pray at Night. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a great horror film, and it's a great way to kick off the year of horror. 2018 is definitely going to be 2018 is going to be definitely a great year for horror. I can't wait, and yeah, really great movie. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching the review. Hope you guys enjoyed. The Explorer 4 out. See you guys later.